At just 12 years old, he sat in an Atlanta courtroom, his smirk sending shivers through the packed gallery. While other kids his age fretted over math homework or the latest gaming console, this boy had been nurturing a secret world of twisted desires that would leave even hardened detectives rattled. Malik Jackson was convinced his youth was his armor, a foolproof shield against real consequences. He believed no jury would lock up a child, that his age was a get-out-of-jail-free card. But a single pristine fingerprint, lifted from a discarded energy drink can, had already betrayed him, anchoring his fate to an undeniable truth. That tiny piece of evidence would convince a judge that evil could wear the face of a child, and this one needed to be caged before he could strike again. How does a child become a monster? How does that monster learn to hide behind the innocent guise of a 12-year-old boy? These questions would haunt Atlanta, born from a crime so depraved it seemed to unravel the very fabric of human understanding. The act wasn't a fleeting outburst of youthful rage or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a calculated, sadistic work of a predator who had been honing his dark urges in secret for years. The victim, a kind-hearted young man with dreams as bright as the city skyline, was chosen not for who he was, but for his sheer availability. A random target to sate an insatiable hunger for power and control. Atlanta, Georgia, pulses with life, a city of sultry summers, vibrant music, and a rich tapestry of culture woven from its historic roots and modern ambitions. From the bustling streets of Midtown to the historic charm of Sweet Auburn, it's a place where dreams are chased under a canopy of dogwood trees. Yet, beneath its lively surface lies a gritty underbelly, where wealth and struggle collide in the shadows of gleaming skyscrapers and historic neighborhoods. This tension creates a landscape where the unthinkable can, and often does, unfold. Even for a city accustomed to its share of crime, the murder of Jamal Carter was a wound that cut deep, a violation that tore at the heart of a tight-knit community. The crime scene, a modest duplex in the working-class neighborhood of Vine City, became the epicenter of a story that exposed a level of darkness few could imagine in a child. Jamal Carter was 24, a recent Morehouse College graduate juggling 2 jobs to care for his younger siblings and support his community center's youth programs. Known for his infectious laugh and unyielding optimism, he was the kind of person who saw light in everyone, a trait that tragically made him vulnerable to the predator who crossed his path. Jamal had no enemies, no hidden secrets, no ties to Atlanta's criminal underworld. He was a good man, caught in the wrong place at the worst possible moment. His death was a brutal erasure of a life brimming with promise, a light snuffed out before it could fully shine. The perpetrator was Malik Jackson, a 12-year-old from a seemingly ordinary suburban family in Marietta, just outside Atlanta's city limits. On the surface, he was utterly unremarkable, a quiet kid, a solid B student, who spent his afternoons gaming on his PlayStation or skateboarding through his cul-de-sac's tree-lined streets. Neighbors saw him as just another kid, maybe a bit shy, but polite enough to wave as he zipped by on his board. Yet beneath this carefully curated veneer of childhood innocence, a sinister ideology was taking root, a belief that he was superior, entitled to dominate another human life. The abduction and murder of Jamal Carter wasn't a spontaneous act. It was the culmination of months of meticulous planning and years of dark fantasies festering in secret. The crime's details were as precise as they were horrifying, revealing a level of premeditation staggering for a child. Malik had stalked Jamal for days, memorizing his routine when he left his duplex, when he stopped at the corner store, when he walked home from his evening shift at a local diner. He chose his moment with chilling precision, using a calculated ruse, a fake cry for help about a lost dog, to lure Jamal into a secluded alley behind a shuttered community center. There, he exploited Jamal's compassion, turning his kindness into a fatal weakness. The act itself was a prolonged nightmare of sadism, a brutal assault designed to maximize Jamal's terror and feed Malik's hunger for absolute control. Investigators arriving at the scene were confronted with a tableau of cruelty that would haunt them for years. Not a chaotic struggle, but a methodical display of torture. The work of a killer who didn't just take a life, but savored every moment of the process. The motive wasn't robbery or revenge, but something far darker. The raw, unfiltered thrill of inflicting pain and asserting dominance. This was a trophy killing in its purest, most depraved form, committed solely for Malik's twisted gratification. The initial investigation was a maddening hunt for a ghost. A killer with no apparent motive or connection to the victim left Atlanta's police department chasing shadows. Detectives from the Atlanta PD's homicide unit worked around the clock, chasing leads that fizzled out, interviewing Jamal's friends, family, and coworkers, who could offer no insight into why anyone would target someone so universally loved. The city held its breath, gripped by fear of an invisible predator who could strike anyone, anywhere, at any time. Atlanta's vibrant streets, usually alive with music and laughter, grew quieter, as parents kept their kids indoors and neighbors eyed strangers with suspicion. The community's reaction was one of raw, collective grief and disbelief. Vigils lit up Vine City, with candles and murals blooming along the streets where Jamal was last seen, a testament to the deep personal impact of his loss. In a city often divided by race, class, and history, Jamal's murder became a unifying tragedy, a stark reminder of life's fragility in a place known for its resilient spirit. The psychological profile of the killer painted a chilling portrait of a narcissistic, sadistic personality, someone who felt no remorse and likely relished the chaos their crime had unleashed. Police knew they weren't hunting a typical criminal but a predator of the highest order, someone who saw people not as human beings, but as objects to be used and discarded for their amusement. They had no idea this monster was a 12-year-old boy, sitting in his suburban bedroom, watching news coverage of his crime with a twisted sense of pride, perhaps even sketching his next move in a hidden notebook. Atlanta's lively energy dimmed as weeks passed without an arrest, replaced by a creeping unease that settled over its neighborhoods like a fog. The city's bright streets felt shadowed by the fear of a killer still at large, a monster who had emerged from its underbelly to commit an act of incomprehensible evil. The breakthrough came from a single overlooked piece of evidence, a pristine fingerprint on a discarded energy drink found near the alley where Jamal was abducted. For weeks it sat unmatched in a database, a silent dead end that frustrated investigators. But a routine cross-check against juvenile records, prompted by a detective's hunch, yielded a stunning hit: Malik Jackson, a 12-year-old with no criminal record, not even a school detention. His arrest sent shockwaves through the Atlanta Police Department and the city. Seasoned detectives, accustomed to the worst of humanity, struggled to grasp that a boy so young could harbor such calculated cruelty. When they arrived at Malik's home, a picture of suburban normalcy with a tidy lawn, a basketball hoop, and a skateboard leaning against the garage, they were met with disbelief. Malik's parents, Denise and Terrence, were outraged, screaming about police harassment and a terrible mistake. Malik, however, remained eerily calm, his expression one of detached curiosity, as if being led away in handcuffs was merely an interesting diversion from his afternoon. In the sterile, windowless interrogation room, Malik's composure hardened into icy arrogance. Seated across from Detective Jamal Robinson, a 20-year veteran known for cracking tough cases, Malik wasn't intimidated. He was entertained. He treated the interrogation like a game, a chance to perform on a stage he'd long craved. His confession wasn't a tearful breakdown, but a chilling, boastful recital of his crime, delivered with a smirk that made Robinson's blood run cold. Malik recounted the gruesome details of Jamal Carter's final moments with the calm detachment of a scientist describing an experiment, correcting detectives on minor crime scene details with unnerving precision. How the alley's streetlight flickered, how Jamal's shoes scuffed the pavement. His pride in his work was evident in every word, his memory razor-sharp. Most disturbing was his utter lack of remorse. He described Jamal's pleas for mercy as a boring nuisance, a minor annoyance in an otherwise perfect performance. Detective Robinson, who'd stared into the eyes of countless killers, saw something new in Malik, a void so profound it felt almost supernatural, a complete absence of humanity that defied explanation. Malik's confession was a guided tour through a deeply disturbed mind, a world where empathy was non-existent, and others were mere tools for his gratification. He shared unnecessary details, the sound of Jamal's labored breathing, the texture of the alley's gravel under his knees, seemingly for the sole purpose of traumatizing the officers, feeding off their horror like a parasite savoring a meal. The legal and psychological fallout of a 12-year-old confessing to such a crime was staggering. A team of psychiatrists evaluated Malik, painting a portrait of a textbook psychopath, a child born without a conscience, capable of adult-level manipulation and violence. He'd fooled everyone, parents, teachers, friends, with a flawless mask of normalcy, a performance so convincing that no one suspected the monster beneath. Atlanta, a city of music, culture, and light, now faced the grim reality that one of its most dangerous predators was a child raised in its suburbs. As Malik was led to juvenile detention, his smug confidence held firm. He believed his age would protect him, that the system couldn't handle a killer so young, that he'd be treated as a troubled child rather than the cold-blooded predator he was. But he'd miscalculated. Society, confronted with such unadulterated evil, would find a way to contain it, no matter how small the monster. Prosecutor Aisha Thompson faced the daunting task of building an airtight case against a child, knowing the defense would argue Malik's confession was coerced, claiming a 12-year-old couldn't knowingly waive his rights. Aisha's team dug into Malik's past, uncovering a chilling pattern of cruelty that had been ignored or dismissed at every turn. They found evidence of tortured neighborhood pets, cats and squirrels mutilated in the woods behind his subdivision, incidents neighbors had attributed to coyotes, never suspecting a quiet boy down the street. Most damning were the ignored warnings from Malik's younger sister, Keisha, who'd repeatedly told her parents and a school counselor she feared her brother's dark look and his threats to hurt her if she spoke about the animals he'd killed. Her pleas were brushed off as sibling rivalry, her fears dismissed as an overactive imagination. The system, parents, school, community had failed her, just as it had failed to see the monster it was enabling. Aisha argued this wasn't a sudden act, but the predictable outcome of systemic oversights. Malik's parents, blinded by denial, refused to see the darkness in their son. The school, stretched thin by budget cuts, missed the classic warning signs of a budding psychopath. The community, lulled by suburban tranquility, looked the other way. The case exposed a devastating pattern of failures, where those meant to protect children had instead nurtured a predator. The trial was a media storm, with Atlanta's vibrant streets buzzing with outrage and grief. Satellite trucks lined the courthouse, reporters from across the globe clamoring for updates. Inside, the courtroom was a pressure cooker, packed with a somber audience awaiting justice. Aisha's opening statement framed Malik not as a child, but as a predator hiding in plain sight. She laid out the evidence, the fingerprint, the confession, the history of animal cruelty, each fact a brick in the wall of guilt she built around him. First responders recounted the crime scene's horror, their voices cracking with emotion. Jamal's mother, Latoya, took the stand, her frail voice painting a vivid picture of her son's warmth, his dreams of teaching, his love for his siblings. Her testimony was a gut-wrenching portrait of a mother's unending grief, leaving jurors in tears. On the second day, Malik revealed the true depth of his depravity. He arrived in court wearing a faded red hoodie, Jamal's hoodie, a gift from his father Marcus, for his 24th birthday, last worn in a photo taken days before his death. The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow, his face paling as he stopped mid-testimony, eyes fixed on Malik. A gasp of horror rippled through the courtroom as the truth dawned. Malik had taken the hoodie, likely from the crime scene, as a sick trophy. The chaos was immediate. Marcus lunged at the defendant's table, restrained by bailiffs, his cry of rage echoing through the chamber. The hoodie was a silent taunt, a gesture of contempt so cruel it obliterated any lingering doubt about Malik's nature. The jury no longer saw a boy but a monster, his age now irrelevant. Judge Amara Okeke, her face a mask of fury, ordered the jury removed, demanding answers from Malik's defense team, who stammered they had no idea how he'd obtained the hoodie. The incident was a catastrophic blow to the defense, erasing any hope of portraying Malik as a troubled child. Aisha presented Malik's school notebooks, filled not with class notes but with violent sketches of torture and murder, alongside a computer search history obsessed with serial killers, body disposal, and evading police. Under his bed, detectives found a hidden box containing animal trophies, bones, fur, claws, And most damning, Jamal's silver wallet chain, a graduation gift for Marcus. When Detective Robinson placed the chain on the evidence table, Marcus let out a choked sob, the sight a physical blow to his already broken heart. The chain wasn't just evidence. It was proof of Malik's predatory nature, a trophy taken to relive his triumph. For the jury, this stripped away any vestige of Malik's childhood. He was a trophy hunter, a collector of lives, and Jamal was just the first human in his gallery of death. The defense's case was a desperate bid to humanize a monster, arguing Malik suffered from a rare mental disorder that caused him to snap. Their expert, a controversial psychiatrist, claimed Malik had intermittent explosive disorder, causing uncontrollable violent outbursts. Aisha's cross-examination dismantled this, exposing the diagnosis as unscientific and the expert's history of testifying for wealthy defendants. The defense's gamble to put Malik on the stand backfired spectacularly. Initially, he played the part of a remorseful child, his voice soft, eyes downcast. But under Aisha's surgical questioning about the wallet chain, the notebooks, his lies to police, his mask slipped. When she played his boastful confession, Malik's face twisted with narcissistic rage. He stood shaking and screamed, "I killed him, and I do again." The courtroom erupted, jurors staring in horrified silence, his parents sobbing as their denial shattered. It was a confession of pride, a predator unmasked. During victim impact statements, LaToya and Marcus spoke of Jamal's life, his kindness, his dreams, the void left behind. As Marcus's voice broke with anger, Malik laughed, a sharp, mocking bark that turned grief into a punchline. The courtroom froze, jurors weeping, Judge Okeke's knuckles white on her gavel. The laughter was more damning than any evidence, a sound that would haunt the room forever. A surprise witness, Malik's former friend, testified about a collection game, journals detailing plans for more victims, including a classmate, a mailman, and a young mother. Malik had bragged about Jamal's murder, showing off the wallet chain, and invited the boy to join his next kill. These journals, recovered from Malik's room, confirmed he was a budding serial killer, stopped just in time. At sentencing, Malik's final statement was a cruel taunt, describing Jamal's final pleas with sadistic glee. Judge Okeke condemned him as the darkest soul she'd ever encountered, sentencing him to life in juvenile detention, with parole possible only after 25 years. Malik's arrogant mask crumbled into childish sobs, not of remorse, but of entitlement denied. As he was led away, he flashed a chilling smile at the jury, a final promise from a caged monster. Atlanta, scarred but relieved, united in justice served. Malik's smile lingered as a dark stain on the city's soul, a reminder that even in a place of vibrant light, evil can grow in the smallest shadows, whispering a cautionary tale through its dogwood-lined streets.